Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about Bolivia as well as Chile and Hong Kong. Before I do that, though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can get plugged into our website. You can join our website over here in this contributors area if you want to join and start contributing your content, essays, articles, vlogs, interviews, etc. If you want to download my books or purchase some shirts from us, check that out there. You can find Conscious Music here. You can see all of our video interviews, reports, live shows, and all of our articles, essays, etc. You can find us on all these alternative social media platforms, mine, Steemit, Discord, BitChute. You can also sign up for our text list right there. And if you want to support us via Patreon or Subscribe Star right there, I also recommend signing up for our email newsletter. So let's get into this. Before I go any further, though, I want to preface this with saying I'm not Bolivian. I don't have any family or friends in Bolivia. I'm not from Chile. I don't have any friends or family. Well, a couple friends. And I'm not from Hong Kong and don't have any friends or family out there. But I am open to anybody who wants to reach out to give a local perspective or a perspective from somebody there about the situations we're about to go over. Often I've found sometimes that as journalists and commentators, we can sort of be almost a little bit of a sort of colonist mentality by assuming that we can understand the politics of another nation from afar, and that is obviously not always accurate. So I just want to say that. And also I want to say that in the past, when I've commented on situations in Venezuela and Syria, I get called, an Assad apologist or a Maduro apologist, or you don't understand Venezuelan politics, because people will say, no, you don't understand, Assad's a bad guy, Maduro's a bad guy, in the case of Bolivia, Morales is a bad guy. And I'm not sitting here trying to speak and claim that any of these political leaders are angels or that I support them in any kind of fashion. And at the same time, we also have to be aware that the U.S. government and intelligence agencies, Western intelligence agencies, the NATO governments, have a long history of basically infiltrating and creating division, sowing division in other nations, and toppling governments, whether those are genuinely democratically elected governments or just governments that weren't in line with them either way. That doesn't necessarily mean the governments that they're removing or the leaders that they're removing are good guys. It just means that they might not have been going along with the U.S. agenda. And that's quite clear, as we're going to see here in a moment, when it comes to Evo Morales and Bolivia. So I just wanted to preface all that with that information. Again, I'm open to hearing from perspectives of people who are local, who have family there, and who understand that. But don't take my criticism of what's taking place in Bolivia and Chile and Hong Kong to mean that I support the current rulers or leaders there in power. So if you've looked anywhere in the mainstream when it comes to Bolivia, if you've heard about it at all, you would have heard that what we're witnessing is just a transition where the people have risen up and they've kicked out Evo Morales, the indigenous president, who won a fourth term and apparently was ruled constitutional by their court systems. Some people, of course, are unhappy with it and don't think he should be serving for another term, and I understand that. And along with that, there are people who wanted to get rid of him and take him out of power. And so with all this going on, we're being told that, well, people rose up, pushed him out, and he fled the country due to protests. But the reality seems a little bit more a little different than what we're being told. So Evo Morales recently won re-election. Bolivia has enjoyed relative calm during the length of his presidency, which began in January 2006. In 2008, he expelled the U.S. ambassador and counter-narcotics agents. The two countries have not had an ambassadorial relationship since 2009. And despite what mainstream media headlines have you believe, a military coup is underway in Bolivia. Morales was forced to step down in an attempt to avert further violence, and because we've now found out that there was a $50,000 reward on his head, so he left and went to Mexico. And these are just a sampling of some of the mainstream media headlines of how they're reporting on it. Bolivian leader Evo Morales steps down. Bolivian President Evo Morales steps down following accusations of election fraud. President of Bolivia steps down amid allegations of election rigging. Morales resigns amid scathing election report, rising protests. Bolivian President Evo Morales resigns amid fraud poll protests. Nowhere in these headlines do we see the word coup or any mention of the history or the violence at the hands of the opposition. That includes the burning of a governor's home, the dragging of a mayor through the streets after her hair was cut off and her body painted red, and the destruction of Evo Morales' home. So here are 5 fast facts that you need to know. Evo Morales won re-election on October 20th. Again, now I'm not saying that this guy is perfect, and I'm not saying that their court systems are even legitimate. As we know in the U.S., the court systems have the capability of being just as corrupt as any other totalitarian nation. But these seem to be the facts. A Bolivian court gave Morales the green light to run for a fourth term as president after opponents said doing so would be unconstitutional. Bolivians went to the polls on October 20th, and he walked away with 47.1%. His second place opponent came in 36.5%, and he secured more than 40% and had a higher than 10-point margin over the runner-up, which means there was no need for a runoff, and he was declared the winner. Number two, reports of election fraud seemed to be unfounded. Even before the election was concluded, his opponent, Carlos de Mesa, declared that he would not accept the results if Morales were declared the winner. And you can see his video here in Spanish. The following day, after much outrage from the opposition, the Organization of American States released a statement. While the statement did say that the elections took place in a, quote, peaceful and orderly manner, the OAS expressed its deep concern and surprise at the drastic and hard-to-explain change and the trend of the preliminary results revealed after the closing of the polls. The statement failed to include any actual evidence or data. So they're basically saying once the polls closed, things seemed to switch and Morales came in and won. Marco Rubio is playing his role, saying in Bolivia, all credible indications are Evo Morales failed to secure necessary margin to avoid a second round. However, some concern he will tamper with the results or process to avoid this. The main criticism of the OAS is the significant increase in votes for Morales that came in near the end of the vote. And this article argues that this could be accounted for by understanding the geography of Bolivia, that many of his supporters are from the poor rural areas, and they would be voting, their votes would be getting in later in the evening, which could explain the boost of votes for him towards the end. And the Center for Economic and Policy Research said in a statement on Friday, statistical analysis of election returns and tally sheets from Bolivia's October 20th elections show no evidence that irregularities or fraud affected the official result that gave President Evo Morales a first-round victory. It should be noted that the OAS was created by a U.S. official and anti-communist leaders from South America in 1948 with the sole purpose of disputing democratic elections in which a communist or socialist candidate won. In effect, the OAS is an agent of regime change. In 2000, the OAS flip-flopped on Haiti's national election, first declaring it a great success before changing their position, paving the way for Washington regime change efforts from 2000 to 2004 that resulted in the murder of thousands of people. Number three, Carlos Mesa, who is, again, Morales' main opponent, has a cozy relationship with the U.S. He was the president of Bolivia from 2003 to 2005, and hostilities increased under him. Recently, government cables released by WikiLeaks show that he has a relationship with the U.S. government officials. This was tweeted out the other day from journalist Ben Norton. U.S. government cables released by WikiLeaks show that Bolivia's opposition presidential candidate Carlos Mesa, who lost to Evo Morales in the election, was regularly in correspondence with U.S. officials. For years, the U.S. was using him to undermine Evo. So that's, obviously something that needs to be looked into. Then we have this. 50 to 70% of the world's lithium reserve is found in Bolivia. Some have called Bolivia the Saudi Arabia of lithium. The global demand for the alkali metal has steadily increased as technologies such as cell phones, laptops, and hybrid cars have become woven into the fabric of our everyday lives, and the demand for it isn't expected to slow anytime soon. Bolivia has invested significantly in lithium mining in the country, with Morales having once said, with the exploitation of lithium in a 400 square kilometer area, we'll have enough to maintain ourselves for a century. But I also have this article here that showed that the coup attempt, and that's actually, seems to be successful going on in Bolivia, comes less than a week after Morales stopped a multinational firm's lithium deal. And he said that the Bolivian, lithium belongs to the Bolivian people. So it comes, again, shortly after he canceled an agreement with a German company for developing lithium deposits in the Latin American country for batteries like those in electric cars. So the Morales move on November 4th to cancel the December 28 agreement with Germany's ACI systems came after weeks of protests from the residents of the Potosi area. The region has 50 to 70% of the world's lithium reserves in the Salar de Uyuni salt flats. I apologize for my horrible translation. Among other clients, ACISA provides batteries to Tesla. So Tesla is fueling this destruction of salt flats over here where they want to get the lithium from Bolivians, and they want to carve it up and give it out to the global market, and the U.S. is helping that happen. So he says no to this agreement. Then all of a sudden, a week later, there's a coup. That's another important factor that we need to bring into, and that he has consistently, number 5, Evo Morales has consistently opposed the U.S. empire in Latin America. In 2006, he opened an anti-imperialist military academy in direct opposition to U.S. policies and military involvement throughout Latin America to counter the influence of the School of Americas. He said, quote, "If the empire teaches domination of the world from its military schools, we will learn this from this school to free ourselves from imperial oppression. We want to build anti-colonial and anti-capitalist thinking with this school that binds the armed forces to social movements and counteracts the School of the Americas that always saw the indigenous as internal enemies." Morales has not been shy of his criticism to the United States. So it's another reason they don't like him, and that he has consistently called it out. He's also, in 2017, declared that Bolivia had total independence from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Imagine that. The global banksters don't like people who want freedom for their own countries. And so those are things that you're not being told in the media if you're hearing them report on it at all. And over the past few days, there have been demonstrations all around the country and all around the world saying hands off Bolivia, against the coup. And so that's just another part of the story you won't hear from the Deadstream media. And as I said, this coup came less than a week after multinational firm was rejected for a lithium deal. Then you look at this one here from the Gray Zone. It says that the top Bolivian coup plotters spent time at the School of Americas. Top Bolivian coup plotters trained by U.S. military School of Americas served as attachés in FBI police programs. Now, let's see what we got here. It says, the United States played a key role in the coup in Bolivia in a direct way that has scarcely been acknowledged. Just prior to the Morales resignation, the commander of Bolivia's armed forces, William Calaman, suggested that the president step down. A day earlier, sectors of the country's police force had rebelled. Though Calaman appears to have feigned loyalty to Morales over the years, his true colors showed as soon as the moment of opportunity arrived. He was not only an actor in the coup, he had his own history in Washington. Calaman sat at the top of the military and police command structure that has been substantially cultivated by the U.S. through WINSEC, the military training school in Fort Benning, Georgia, known in the past as the School of Americas. Calaman himself attended a course called Comando y Estado Mayor at the SOA in 2003. At least 6 of the key coup plotters are alumni of the infamous School of Americas, while Calaman and other figures served in the past as Bolivia's military and police attachés in Washington. Within the Bolivian police, top commanders who helped launch the coup have passed through the APLA police exchange program, working out of Washington, D.C., functioning to build relations between U.S. authorities and police officials in Latin America. Interestingly enough, it is common for governments to assign a small number of individuals to work at their country's embassies abroad as military or police attachés. The late Philip Agee, a one-time CIA case officer who became the agency's first whistleblower, explained in 1975 tell-all book how U.S. intelligence traditionally relied on the recruitment of foreign military and police officers, including embassy attachés, as critical assets in regime change and counterinsurgency operations. As this reporter found in more than 11,000 FOIA documents he obtained while writing his book on the paramilitary campaign waged in the lead-up to the 2004 ouster of Haiti's elected government, U.S. officials worked for years to ingratiate themselves and establish connections with Haitian police, army, and ex-army officials. These connections, as well as the recruitment and information-gathering efforts, eventually paid off. In Bolivia, too, the role of the military and police trained by the U.S. was pivotal in forcing regime change. U.S. government agencies such as USAID, which has always been involved in this, USAID is the Trojan horse, as my friend James Corbett has said, that brings in regime change in many countries. But the way the country's security forces were used as a Trojan horse by U.S. intelligence services is less understood. With Morales' forced departure, it becomes impossible to deny how critical a factor it was. And it goes on to say, leaked audio reported on Bolivian news website Le Epoca and by this other website and a range of national media outlets reveals that covert coordination took place between current and former Bolivian police, military, and opposition leaders in bringing about the coup. So the evidence is all around for those who are willing to look. Of course, you won't see it in the mainstream media. One other article I do have here, just in the last days, because this coup has been going on for the last week or so now, but just this weekend we had this new report that Bolivia's new puppet, the interim president, this woman, she is now wasting no time. Her and other officials are wasting no time getting themselves in power. Bolivia's new puppet regime wastes no time aligning with U.S. foreign policy. So again, Bolivia's caretaker government isn't wasting any time overhauling its foreign policy, announcing Friday that it will expel hundreds of Cuban officials and break ties with longtime ally Venezuela, the Miami Herald reports. In a series of statements, Bolivia's new foreign minister, Karen Langerich, told local media that about 725 Cubans, including doctors and medical staff, would be leaving Bolivia on Friday. And she also said that she'd be recalling the diplomatic staff from Venezuela and said, quote, "Of course we'll break diplomatic relations with the Maduro government." And you may remember that a couple months ago, the U.S. was trying to foment a revolution down in Venezuela, and now they're getting their new puppet government in Bolivia to also break ties with the governments of Cuba and of Venezuela because they do not align with the U.S. foreign NATO government policies. And Glenn Greenwald says, in more, it's totally not a coup news. The self-proclaimed president of Bolivia, after seizing powers, the left-wing president was sent into exile and warning him he'd be arrested if he returned, cuts off relations with Venezuela and expels Cuban doctors. So very quickly, things fall into place. For more information on this, for those who want to dive further in this, I recommend you go check out Abby Martin's Twitter page, just twitter.com/Abby Martin. You don't have to agree with Abby on everything. There are definitely areas where I disagree with her, but she does a lot of great foreign policy work, and her Twitter currently has good information on what's been going on there as well. And again, I'll say she does lean left. For those of you who can't handle that, then I guess your heads will explode. But for those who can just look at information objectively, there's some good information about what's going on in Bolivia, especially this new podcast from her and her brother, Robbie Martin, who do Media Roots. This just came out recently, and it's just called No U.S. Coup in Bolivia. You can find that at SoundCloud. I'll put the link to that as well. And a couple other brief mentions that we need to be sure to mention. Hong Kong protesters use catapults, flaming arrows, and javelins in battle with police. They say they are only trying to defend ourselves. They are also turning universities into fortresses, and they've continued to fight back now for weeks, going against the government. It all started with this extradition law, but it has now expanded to be a much bigger fight about freedom of, speech, freedom of movement, just freedom in general, and in Hong Kong, and a fight against the surveillance state. They're just going hard against these cops. We've seen in the past the Hong Kong protesters taking down facial recognition cameras and towers and using lasers to try to block them. And so this continues to go on, and there's been violence going on, unfortunately. Also, as I mentioned earlier, in Chile, we have a similar situation. This time we see protesters using laser pointers to kill a police drone as you see it crash to the ground. A very interesting video. One of my strategies that I might put in my book. There are ways that we can fight back against the technocracy and the smart grid, the surveillance state. We got to be creative, so that's pretty cool to see. But also, this Chilean singer Mon Laferte goes topless at Latin Grammys to support massive Chile protest. You can see her looking naked right there, and it's basically just using her celebrity to call attention to what's taking place in Chile, because people have been hurt. I mean, people are getting really fucked up by the cops out there, and in China and Hong Kong. So we need to pay attention to what's going on around in the world, in Chile and Hong Kong and in Bolivia, and we will keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening internationally, as it is important, because these are our brothers and sisters from around the world. And I want to remind you guys that I am doing a crowdfunding campaign at fundraiser.com/consciousresistance3 if you want to keep funding the future of this conscious resistance network and the work that I do. If you enjoyed this report, please share it with your friends on all platforms. Sign up for our text list, sign up for our email list, and comment below. Let's have a conversation about this, because the only way we're going to change these things is if we expose it to people, how the government intelligence agencies are purposely fomenting dissent in other countries, and you better believe they're doing it in the United States as well. So until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.